Hey guys, some interesting and concerning news today from the Reykjavik Peninsula, from Iceland. Watch my video that I released earlier this morning. It explains a lot. We'll get to this in a little while. I want to tell you there's reports everywhere on the Icelandic television and the Icelandic newspapers, interview with the geologists, the geoscientists, the University of Iceland, the Icelandic Meteorological Office. And what they're saying is we have increased pressure underneath Swartsengi. That's where the Blue Lagoon is and the power plant. We have the magma chamber that is located there at a shallow depth of around 4 kilometers, and it's filling up and it's more than ready for the next event. And they're saying with this increased pressure, the probability for an eruption closer to Grindavik is increasing, or even inside of Grindavik. And we've seen earthquakes in that area recently. We just had Sunday, all over Sunday until Sunday night, earthquake swarms in the higher ranges. We'll talk about this as well in this area. And they released basically two possible scenarios. It could erupt in the same area as we had just the recent eruptions and the one that just ended on May 9th in the Stora Skogfell in the Sutnuka crater series north of Hagafell, or it could go south of Hagafell. And it has already gone south of Hagafell in January, when it went like basically southeast, where nobody expected it. They thought for a time, is this coming from a different magma chamber? And it was right at the doorstep of Grindavik and burned down 3 homes. So now we see earthquakes. Basically, if you see Grindavik here, you see Mount Thorbjorn, and then you see Swartsengi. And then basically between Mount Thorbjorn and Grindavik, we've seen earthquakes and earthquake swarms in the recent 2 weeks that are on the rise. And so there is a higher probability now that it could erupt there too. So then it would be right at the doorsteps of Grindavik. And if it just goes a little more south, it's inside Grindavik and inside the protection walls. They're building a second row of defense walls, basically on the east side, northeast, where we already had a lava breach just like a few weeks ago from the last eruption that just ended. So they're thinking if the next eruption is powerful and it sends this liquid, fast flowing lava on its way, and the lava carpet of the last eruption is higher than the defense walls there, it could flow like a waterfall towards Grindavik. So they're having a second row of defense walls that should catch that lava there on the eastern part. So what about if this goes west? I mean, there's some theories that it might go to Antwerp. I really honestly, in my opinion, I don't see that, but I am worried. I mean, it could erupt anywhere along that 15-kilometer long magma dike that has formed on November 10th, right? So that will be inside Grindavik. It feels like it is moving south. It's not moving north. So we're in the waiting queue, but it concerns me that for sure now the scientists are really saying, and look at this here, that's quote, it is not excluded that a fissure opens closer to Grindavik or within the town limits. And who is saying this? This is Benedict of Feiksson. He's the head of the deformation measurements at the Icelandic Meteorological Office. With every magma intrusion, we see deformation. So he knows what he's talking about. And then he was asked, well, are you actually saying that the chances of it erupting closer to Grindavik or even inside of Grindavik are increasing? And he says, yes, it cannot be ruled out. But they think it's not super likely, but he's saying we're primarily looking at an increased probability, but it's still, they think it's going to go into the old areas. But you know what? I don't think we can be so sure. Of course, he states, the more days go by without an event starting and the pressure increases underneath Swartsengi, the chances that it's getting inside or closer to Grindavik increase. So then he was like, it doesn't make sense for people to stay in Grindavik because people are staying overnight in Grindavik. About 30 homes are occupied right now. And he says, well, basically he says, over time, of course, doesn't make too much sense, but you just have to look at it on a constant basis and make a day-by-day decision. I think they're very careful what they're saying. But you know, my question is, does it make sense to have anybody in that area? You know, I'm not in favor of the Blue Lagoon being open all the time, because it's in that hazard area where civil defense and police chief of Sudurns are saying stay out. And then there's the magma chamber right underneath. We've talked about this in my past videos if you want to know more about this. So why am I talking about Grindavik? And there's some other news about Grindavik that just do not make sense. I can't get it in my head. And I see the anger is rising inside of me, because I just feel that these establishments, or whoever it is, they're using tourists as commodity to make money or to recover from this disaster, while the residents are moving out to safety and don't want to come back, have their homes bought out by a company that was specifically formed by the government to buy them out of their homes so that they can leave. They don't want to come back because it's dangerous. And the police says you're in there, in the whole area of these hazards map, Blue Lagoon included, at your own risk. And you're responsible for your own actions and inactions. And then they're constantly, on the other hand, talking about hauling tourists into these areas. And I'm thinking, are you nuts? And it's unfair to these tourists. So I just reported, yeah, they want to open the Grindavik golf course. That's in between the fissures. Yes, they're old fissures, but through the events of November 10th, they widened, they got longer. Some of these holes, I don't know what you will call it. I'm not into golf. I'm more into horses, and all that horse riders think about when they see a golf course is we want to canter over it because it's such a nice, I'm not saying anymore. No, golf seems to be nice. I have nothing against golf, but 2 holes seem to be sunken in the cracks and have been destroyed. There were pictures about it, and it's in the hazard area. And they have just increased the hazard level for this area. They're saying the gas pollution. So it's orange right now, and there's the golf course, but that's not all. They have formed sort of like a tourist board to see where can we put these tourists so that they make us the most money. So they were talking about hauling them into buses, because it's not safe enough to go in your own cars, because there might be a sudden crack opening in some road or somewhere where you might walk around or drive around. So they're creative. Let's haul them into buses and haul them to restaurants, make a reservation, and then haul them back out there. And they know the people are not going to the restaurants because the food is so great there. There's nothing there that they couldn't do in Reykjavik. People will go there to stare at the devastation in Grindavik and want to see some cracks. People do that, right? So that's why they're trying to do that. And in light of what the reports are saying everywhere, greater risk every day for Grindavik, they just released something today, an interview with a restaurant owner who says, yeah, you know, we're open, but there's not enough people in Grindavik that could support this. Well, no, there's not, because the residents are leaving and they're being told, don't come back, it's not safe. We don't want you here. We're waiting for the next evacuation. So the great idea is, well, if it's not safe enough for the residents and they're moving somewhere else, let's haul in the tourists, right? To keep these restaurants going. So they're talking about this, and I'll show you a screenshot here. I'm not inventing this. And you know, that comes with the news. There's changes in the seismic activity. It's even rising. So in the last 24 hours, there were even 90 earthquakes. The days before, it was between 50 and 80 or 60, now 90. But no, the businesses say, we want to see that it is allowed that tourists can come into the town as soon as possible. I don't want to name the restaurant owner. I don't want to bash any restaurant owner. I know how hard it is for them. And they should be bought out too. They should get cheap loans to open up their restaurants somewhere else. That's my opinion. So, but this specific restaurant owner, he speaks for the others, I think, wants to see people allowed back into town as soon as possible, because he says that's the only way that the activities in the town can become normal and the service companies can come to life again. I don't know. Is it that people don't want to realize it? It's like, are they still in shock and they're still in this mourning phase of denial? Because It's the only way that activities can become normal if you haul in tourists. The activities will not become normal while that volcanic system keeps doing what it's doing, and it just did awake from an 800-year dormancy, and the scientists are saying it can last for decades, even centuries. So it won't go back to normal. There'll be evacuations, crack openings. Now Grindavik is like a Swiss cheese underneath. You never know when something else is collapsing. There were major cracks underneath the artificial carpet, grass carpet in an indoor soccer field that they discovered. One worker lost its life falling into a crack and disappearing, and he was the one working on filling the crack, so he knew it's there. One guy it's like a plumber, he drove into a driveway, opened the door, wanted to step out, then a crack opened on a driveway. So it's insane, because every earthquake swarm that comes before the next eruption can do more damage, open more sinkholes, more cracks, anything. And now, since we see more activity again coming more towards Grindavik, Grindavik is at more risk again, that there might be more infrastructure damage, more cracks, more fissures getting longer, wider, sudden sinkholes, right? We saw it after November 10th. There was like a massive, like almost 100 feet or even deeper sinkhole opening, a big one. You could throw a car in there in front of one of the restaurants, the Salthouse restaurant. The whole restaurant is done. The home is tilted. There's holes everywhere. The foundation, it's cracked. Who knows? Maybe there's a crack underneath, right? So this can happen at any time. So let's say you have the tourists in there, and then the earthquake swarm starts and these sinkholes open. You might be cut off from the road that leads out of there. This is insane. So he says, well, it's nice to have a lunch event, have it open for lunch and then in the evening, but we need the tourists during the day. The tourists are not your commodity to save your businesses. I'm sorry to say so. These are innocent people from out of country, from somewhere else, that want to have a relaxing vacation, a safe vacation. If you advertise it as like adventure tourism, adrenaline with a waiver, you might die, you might fall into a crack. Really, really tell them about the risks. So if you really want to stare at the damages in Grindavik, be aware, even your bus could fall into a crack, an eruption could start inside of Grindavik, you might die. Then okay, if they still go, yeah, if I climb the Mount Everest, I know many people died, it's dangerous. But these tourists, they don't know. There's been so many interviews, and here in the comments, you guys keep writing me. People don't even know when they go to the Blue Lagoon that this place has been evacuated 4 times and that they're waiting for the next evacuation because they do not close down in light of what everyone says is coming shortly. No, they're basically locking in a bus driver in their hotel that should be ready when evacuation comes, sirens come again, people need to go out and evacuate. In my last video, you see a video that one of the tourists filmed. It's like red everywhere. The eruption is in full force and it takes them roughly an hour to evacuate that place. Same with Grindavik. And usually these eruptions, they start without warning now, because there's so many tunnels already built from that volcanic system where the magma could flow from that magma chamber. So this business owner says, yeah, his restaurant opened up at May 1st and the business went well, but it lacked all the tourists in town. He considers them a key factor for the development of Grindavik. What development? They're doing the opposite of development right now in Grindavik. The volcano destroys Grindavik, keeps continuing to destroy Grindavik, and the people are moving out, getting rid of their homes. Yes, there's some that want to stay, and they notoriously want to stay, and it's their right. And of course, the port is an important business location where they keep things going, but there's boats, people can get out quickly. But to say that the tourists are a key factor for the development of Grindavik makes me angry. It makes me angry. So this guy, he believes people will live in Grindavik again because of the business. But he says his own family is not there. They're not living there. They're in Reykjavik, where it's safer. He says, well, we have some family here in town that own apartments. We have rented them all out. And, you know, he thinks people will come back, but probably other people, probably foreign workers or something that will work in the port. So insane. Insane. It's really, I look at the Icelandic newspapers every day at the television station, and there you've got the news. Danger increases, pressure increases, could be inside of Grindavik, could be a bigger eruption, new earthquake swarms closer to Grindavik, new eruption location. You look at here in the map, like south of Mount Thorbjorn, and I'm like, what? Okay, but we need the tourists to rebuild that town to keep that. What the heck? Really, guys, let me know in the comments. Am I crazy or what is going on here? And in light of that, let's talk about something else. Let's have a look at the earthquakes, but then I want to talk about, many of you have asked me when the eruptions were taking place and the lava was threatening to go like on the eastern part, flowing along the eastern defense walls, and there's a farm. People could see this on the aerial pictures and they were like, oh my God, because if the lava flows into the sea, it could flow over that farm. They have built a defense wall there yet, but I have looked into this. It's basically a horse riding business for tourists or something like this. And what the people there are saying, they're staying, and we'll talk about why they're staying. And I fully understand it, but it's a difficult situation for them. But before we do that, guys, let's have a quick look at the current earthquake situation. So there you see the earthquakes for the whole country. So something that really stands out is the Reykjanes Peninsula on the left bottom corner there, and everything that's red that are earthquakes in the last 4 hours, everything that's orange that's between 4 to 12 hours, everything that's yellow is between 12 and 24 hours, and light blue 24 to 36 hours, and dark blue 36 to 48 hours. But you see the charts here. All Sunday, the earthquake swarm has started again. And now let's look at the Reykjanes Peninsula and specifically, so that you see where are most of these higher range earthquakes that are over magnitude 2, and that is something for a volcanic system. That is something to consider. So an interesting spot is where we see these earthquakes, and especially the recent earthquakes. So it's at the very western tip of the Reykjanes Peninsula. We know the North Atlantic Ridge goes right through there, divides Iceland in half, where two tectonic plates are moving away from each other, basically tearing Iceland apart. And if they're moving, they're opening a space, a gap, where magma can come up to the surface from underneath more easily because the crust is moving away. So look at these dots, the red dots and the orange dots, basically. There is a lot of recent earthquakes at that tip. So what does that mean? Well, we don't know. Some scientists are saying pressure is building up in the whole area because of that pressure that is created by the magma chamber underneath swartsengi. And look at my last video. I explain more about that magma chamber because they have released a fill amount, and that is something we weren't aware so much before. We always thought, okay, when they're saying the maximum point of elasticity is if the land rise, if there's magma flown in the amount between 8 to 13 million cubic meters. So people thought, okay, that's the capacity of that magma chamber. No, it's not. And I'll explain it in that video. That capacity is at least 80 million cubic meters. And why is everyone saying, well, now that we're at 17 million cubic meters, why is it overly full? So look at my last video, I'll explain it. It takes a little bit longer to explain that, but it's really interesting. And it helps you to understand that system. I'll put the video in the end screen as well. So let's have a look at the Reykjanes Ridge so that we see a little bit more into the sea. And you see the blue dots there. We have LD there. That's basically a rock. So there have been some earthquakes too. So it seems definitely related to the North Atlantic Ridge. But if you look back at the Reykjanes Peninsula, a lot of earthquakes where Grindavik is. A lot of earthquakes, and a lot of earthquakes basically south of Hagafell and south of Mount Thorbjorn, and that's where Grindavik is, right? So we will have to wait where it will be erupting, but there is a possibility that this could be it for the town. And then the town will only be good again if the tourists come back. No, talk to the volcano and say, could you please stop rumbling in this area and go somewhere else? Then we're talking. But the tourists are not your solution. It's just careless, to say the least. It's even worse than careless, in my opinion. So this farm, if you look here, it's right by the coast, these 3 homes with the red roofs, and you know, they're staying, and basically they've built a defense wall right around them. I mean, isn't that nice if you have your land divided by that? But it's nicer than having lava flowing over your land and destroy everything and destroy your home and everything. The people that live there, they do not want to leave because they fear that if they leave and then something bad happens, they're separated from their animals. And we're talking large animals, like they have, I don't know, maybe sheep, but horses. So if you have several of them, I know what I'm talking about. You don't have a trailer where you can put in 10, 20 horses at once. So you have to drive multiple times and you just can't, right? I mean, their way out would definitely not to the west towards Reykjavik, more towards civilization. It would be more out east. There's some civilization too, but let's see, they evacuate to the west, they can't come back, right? That's the problem. So the town is called, I don't know if I pronounced it right, it's a little settlement, it's called Raun, and it's basically connected to Grindavik. It's basically a suburb of Grindavik, if you want to say so. And the farmer on the farm is determined not to leave for the sake of the animals. And there's several residents that do not want to leave, and they haven't left the town for a month and a half, because that's horrible, because they think, wow, if I go to the supermarket or shopping in Reykjavik or something, and then something happens, I can't come back. And then the animals, I fully feel for them, and I think I'd do the same, absolutely. They want to stay home if there is an evacuation, so they can take all their animals with them. And they're saying, that's a quote that one of the residents said in an interview, we're just tied up here that way. We have animals here and we have horses, and we don't really dare to leave the place if there's an evacuation unless we know that we can really take our animals with you. They also have sheep and dogs. Good, they don't have too many horses there, so I don't think this is the place that has that horse business. Let's look at Google Earth here. So there you see that's the horse business area, and there you see them, they're really basically right by the sea. They're saying when they were evacuated in November 10th, when that large earthquake swarm started and most of the damage occurred, they're saying they had to leave the farm in a hurry and only managed to take the 2 horses and the dogs with them. So they had to leave the sheep. We've talked about this issue with the sheep, and then some farmers, I don't think it was them, were fighting. It was like an indoor sheep farm or something. They were fighting to get in there to get their sheep out, and it was a big bureaucratical mismatch sort of thing. So they say they're quite burned after that experience, and they do everything to avoid that the same thing will happen to them again. And they're saying, considering how the behavior of the officials was, we are very upset about it, and they think they weren't treated so well. 1.5 months they haven't gone outside the city limits. Guys, you have to imagine this. This is not good. They say, we haven't taken a chance on leaving here if we don't get anything, we don't have anything that we could come back to. So his farm has changed a lot, because there's like these high defense walls that have been built there, and they were built when it was clear that the lava flow from the last eruption could reach that settlement, and these walls are now complete, so they're probably 8 meters high. So he says that, you know, from the 2nd floor of the building, maybe from there of his house, you can see over these defense walls, but not from when you're out on the farm. It definitely changes the scenery, but you know, like I said, you can't complain about that. It could save your life and your farm. He says the one positive thing is it's like a wall that shields them from the traffic on the road that goes there, Grindavik. So, okay, at least one thing that is good, right? So what he is saying, and that's interesting, and yeah, why not? He said he wants to make a good use of these defense walls. He says he wants to seed some plants and he wants to grow something on it, and he wants to make them green and beautiful, wants to plant trees, but he's not sure whether they will keep living in Grindavik. So that's definitely said. So yeah, it's a difficult situation to live there. It's probably be the whole Grindavik will be turned into hotels and short-term Airbnb rentals. I just see it. I think they have plans like this in the drawer. It just a gong show, guys. I'll leave it at that. I'll see you very soon with another update. So check out yesterday's video that explains that magma chamber. It's a longer one, but it's well worth it. If you're interested in that topic, you really should see that one. And if you're interested in Campi Flegreg, boy, it's rumbling there, and there's new groundbreaking news how they determined to measure that magma chamber there. That's basically at the same depth as the magma chamber here in Grindavik. So watch that too. There's lots of stuff. I'll put some in the end screen, but check out my channel, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the coffees. They're really, really needed at the moment. So thanks for that. Thanks for the supers, and I hope to see you soon, guys. Bye-bye.